This video is on sorting and filtering sets of data in an Excel spreadsheet. When working with large data sets in Excel, it can be helpful to use sorting and filtering to more easily visualize the aspects of the data in which you are interested. In this data set, we have 7 columns that contain information. Some of this data is categorical, such as the region, representatives' names, and the items sold. Others are continuous, such as numbers of units sold and the total costs. If you were interested in determining which region had the highest total sales, you would need to either manually pick through the values and add up all of the totals for each region, or if you use the sort tool, you could separate all of the data into chunks by their regions. Then use the sum function from the previous video to determine the region with the highest total sales. In order to do this, you simply select all of the data by clicking and dragging or holding in the Shift key and using the arrows until all of the data is highlighted. Under the Data tab in the Excel banner, you will see an icon labeled Sort. If you click this icon, a pop-up box will appear, in which you can instruct Excel on how you would like to sort your data. The first thing you should do is indicate whether your data set contains headers. This one does, so I will make sure the box in the upper right corner is checked. If you click on the drop-down menu labeled Sort By under Column, the names of your columns appear as options. If you had not indicated that your data has headers, the Sort By options become the column letters A through G. When you select Region in this drop-down menu, it will use this column as the indicator by which to sort the data. The options in the drop-down menu under Sort On are Values, Cell Color, Font Color, and Cell Icon. We will choose Values most of the time. The options in the drop-down menu under Order are A to Z, Z to A, and Custom List. Since we are just looking at separating by a categorical value like region, it doesn't matter which order we choose. I will select A to Z and click OK. The data is now sorted by region, with all of the central, east, and west rows grouped together. If we also wanted to determine which representative was responsible for the most sales within each of these regions, we could do that by adding another level to the Sort tool. Again, we select all of our data and click on the Sort icon. Our original level of sorting by region is still there. And we will click Add Level. You will notice that the New Column Selection drop-down menu is preceded by the words Then By. This indicates that the data will be sorted by region first and then our next selection. If you would like to see why this is important, try reversing the order on your own using 2 columns that have categorical values that are distributed across one another. For example, there are binders sold in all regions, so try sorting by region, then by item, and see how that result compares to the inverse. For the next level, we will select Rep and keep the Sort On as values and the order as A to Z. After I click OK, I can now see that the data has been separated into the 3 regions and then by the names of the representatives within that region. You can now add up the total amounts of cost for each representative in their region and see who has the highest total sales in each region. If you are interested in only looking at a subset of data that interests you, apply a filter. Again, we will select all of our data, and under the same Data tab, we will click on the filter icon. Notice that each of the column headers in row 1 now have a drop-down arrow. When I click on the drop-down arrow next to the item column header, I see some options for filtering the data. You will notice the check boxes next to each type of item that can be found in this column. If I only wanted to see the data associated with the rows containing pencils, I would only select that checkbox and leave the others blank. I will also select pens from this list to compare the total amounts of pencils and pens sold. There is also an option called Text Filters, which provides some expressions to help you narrow your selection without having to be too specific. There is also a search box in case a column contains a large number of possibilities, like in the Total column. Once I have selected which items I want to filter by, I click OK, and only the rows containing those items in the item column remain. I can now go back up to the same item drop-down menu and select Sort A to Z. This will sort the data so the pens are grouped together and the pencils are grouped together. I can then add up the numbers of units sold for each item. It is very important that you select individual cells if you are going to use a function such as sum. If you hold the Shift key down and arrow up or down, you will also be selecting all of the cells in the rows that you cannot currently see. This is why the row numbers skip, because you didn't delete the other data. It is just hidden. Notice that there is a filter icon on the drop-down menu for the column header that I have filtered by. This lets me know that I have filtered this data by that column and any other column that contains that icon. After you have finished with your filtered data, you can simply click the filter icon again, and all of the rows that were hidden by the filter tool are now visible. These tools will help you to work with your data. I would suggest experimenting with the sort and filter tools to become more familiar with them.